welcome to another episode of Halftime on the Hudson. Thank you again for joining us, as I said. Again, I'm Connor Kurpat.
Zach Musso.
And let's get right into it. Let's start by going over the biggest NFL news of the week, I would say. Offensive tackle Cam Robinson has been franchise tagged by the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is huge, I would say.
Well, it's the second biggest news.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just pulling your guys' strings.
The Giants signed an offensive tackle named Matt Gano today.
That's going to be huge. That's going to be huge. News. All right, no, let's get to the real stuff.
Real stuff.
Let's get to the real stuff. Russell Wilson has been sent over to the Denver Broncos. The deal involved Russell Wilson and a fourth-round pick being sent to Denver, and then in return, Seattle got 2 firsts, 2 seconds, a fifth-round pick, Drew Lock, Noah Fant, and Shelby Harris. Pretty big package there, but if I'm being honest, Zach, I don't really know if this was that crazy of a deal. I mean, yes, the 2 firsts are big, the 2 seconds are big. Drew Lock is a scrub. Shelby Harris is always hurt. And Noah Fant, he's up and coming, but, I mean, Seattle doesn't ever use tight ends. They had Jimmy Graham. They hardly used the guy. So I feel like while this might be considered a win for Seattle, I don't know if they got enough in return. But tell me what you think of this trade.
Yeah, I'm glad I don't have to see Drew Lock dance into future anymore. But, you know, this is a weird trade for me because Seattle seemed to have just an old, aging roster. They also released Bobby Wagner yesterday. It seemed like it was the time to move off Russell Wilson. They were kind of wasting him. On the Broncos' perspective, makes a lot of sense. They're built to win right now. But it just feels like it has the possibility to be one of those huge lose-lose kind of trades in the end because the Broncos are in a tough division. They got 2 elite quarterbacks with Mahomes and Herbert. There's some guy in Las Vegas that we shall talk about in a couple minutes. And then Seattle, I don't think they're the worst drafting team in football. That's the reason they got where they are. The roster's in pretty bad shape because they can't draft. And I don't see them being able to make Russell Wilson into the picks into anything. They traded 2 firsts for Jamal Adams 2 years ago, and they got 2 firsts for Russell Wilson, so they already squandered an opportunity there. So I don't know. It's a weird trade. I would still put Broncos either 3rd or 4th in the AFC West right now. I don't know. I don't think it makes them a Super Bowl contender. I think it makes them a playoff contender, and it just feels like a lot to give up not to get Super Bowl contention.
Yeah, I would agree. I think for the Broncos, to me, they still feel like a fringe playoff team. I don't think they have enough pieces on offense or on that interior offensive line to really make them a really good team. Yes, they have Jerry Jeudy. Yes, they have Cortland Sutton. Pair that with Javonte Williams and Russell Wilson. They are good offensively. I just don't know if the defensive side of the ball can get it done. Obviously, Von Miller wants to come back potentially. They have Bradley Chubb. He's a little inconsistent at times just because he gets hurt a lot. And, I mean, their secondary is good. But, again, I just don't think that Broncos team really screams a strong playoff contender to me. But jumping back over to what you talked about the Seahawks, I would totally agree. They draft horribly. And from the very beginning, I've said that I think Russell Wilson should have been on the team longer than Pete Carroll. I think Pete Carroll should have been the first one to go before Russell Wilson went. Pete Carroll, I think, gets a little bit of a free pass, if you will, just because he took them to a Super Bowl and won a Super Bowl. I don't know. I just am not crazy about Pete Carroll. He's drafted horribly. He hasn't done much with his team in years. Yes, they've made the playoffs a couple times, but at the end of the day, they haven't really gotten to the Super Bowl ever since.
One playoff win in the last 5 years.
It's absolutely atrocious, and I feel like if he's any other coach, not Pete Carroll, they'd be out the door.
Yeah.
They'd be out the door. So, I don't know. I'm never on that Pete Carroll bandwagon. I think they should have stuck with Russ, ship Pete out.
I do have one other reaction to this trade. You know, makes me laugh to think about the Las Vegas Raiders now. Connor's old special Las Vegas Raiders. Derek Carr back relegated to the 4th place spot. His quarterback rankings, which he should be, lost to Daniel Jones. That Raiders team, they're just tough sledding now. And, you know, it's just natural selection kind of picked me to become a Raiders hater. I never really had any feelings about the Raiders at all. But, you know, I turned into the Stephen A. of this show, hating on the Raiders. And, you know, just makes me laugh to think about their misery of the Raider fans. No playoff wins for Derek Carr, you know. Just going to stay like that for a long way for my boy Connor over here.
Listen, I'm going to put it this way. How many MVP votes did Justin Herbert get or Russell Wilson?
I'm going to guess 0.
How many did Derek Carr get?
If he got more than 0,
hell yeah, baby. So Derek Carr, I would argue, is probably better than both of them. No, I wouldn't say that. But I think Derek Carr definitely is going to absolutely flourish in the Josh McDaniels offense. I'm not entirely worried. I'm more worried about, than anything, that Raiders defense. I mean, now that they're changing their defensive coordinator, they're likely changing some pieces here and there. Max Crosby's still going to kill it, obviously. But Yeah, offensively, I think they're fine. I mean, the last thing that Raider fans should be thinking is the Broncos got Russell Wilson, Chargers Herbert, and the Chiefs Patrick Mahomes. The last thing you should be thinking is ship out Derek Carr. That makes no sense. What are we going to do then? We just made the playoffs, and we're just going to burn it down to the ground and start over with a rebuild? No. We can still make it. Don't be scared of Russell Wilson. He was hurt last year. He didn't look the same. I'm not going to say washed. That's a little bold claim. He's definitely not the man he used to be, though. And that Chargers team, the only person on there that scares me is Justin Herbert. No one else is really coming that hard. So I still think the Raiders have a chance to finish second in the AFC West. That might be a bold take, but a lot of Carr hate out there from you and on Twitter, but he's going to show you guys up next season. I no doubt in my mind about that.
I think it's too late for Josh McDaniels to back out again, to Indianapolis. He seems like a flaky guy. Seems like he's going to back out again here. All right, it's enough Raiders. We got enough about the Raiders. We don't care.
Let's jump into the next big trade. Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz was sent over to the Washington Commanders for 2 third-round picks. That was really interesting. I didn't really expect that to come. Actually, I thought Carson Wentz was going to get cut, in all honesty. But it's going to be interesting to see. I was really rooting for Carson Wentz this past season. I thought he was going to do really well in that Colts offense with Jonathan Taylor and some of the other pieces that they had on there offensively in the receiver core. But he really didn't, especially in that Jaguars loss. He looked absolutely atrocious. We'll see what he could do, though, in Washington. It feels like potentially a transitional quarterback situation there. We're going to see how that has to work out in the end. What do you think, Zach?
I think it shows their desperation going after Carson Wentz. They traded 2 third-round picks for a guy who has been, since he tore his ACL, a fringe starting quarterback, and they have to pay him $28 million. It seems like a desperate franchise trying to win now and going all in on a guy who his teammates don't even really like. And as a Giants fan, sitting back now, we're rebuilding. The quickest way to rebuild is playing a bad division. We get to go up against Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts 4 times a year. That's a good spot. And just Washington in general, it's just a tough franchise. The jokes write themselves. Carson Wentz is now the king commander. I mean, I don't know. It's just something about it. I honestly would have stuck with Taylor Heineke over Carson Wentz. I don't buy him at all. It's just, you see those shovel passes. He threw some game away. To take a Colts team and not even make the playoffs, that has a top 5 defense in football, the best running back in football, a running back that was so good he was gaining MVP attention at the end of the year. You have to be a special kind of bad to let that happen. And it's a good day in Indianapolis because anybody's a replacement over Carson Wentz. Anybody, a trash can, anybody.
You know who wouldn't be a good replacement over Carson Wentz? Daniel Jones, man.
Well, he beat Derek Carr.
I'm kidding. You did say that it's going to be easy for the Giants now. I wouldn't say that. You guys are still the Giants. Regardless, I'm sure you guys might lose 2 times to Carson Wentz. That might be on the table.
Nah, Washington's the only team we beat.
Okay, all right. That's fair. I will agree with you, though. Tyler Heineke, I think, could be potentially better at this point than Carson Wentz. Don't sleep on Heineke. I think he's a good player.
Yeah.
Going into some other quarterback news, though, Aaron Rodgers is going to be returning to Green Bay. Now, it's reported that his contract is 4 years, $200 million. He came out, said that that's not true. I hope it's not true because I don't think any quarterback deserves to make $50 million in that range. That is just absolutely absurd, especially for a guy that is Aaron Rodgers' age when they have a young Jordan Love sitting behind him. Now, Jordan Love isn't that good, but nonetheless, you got a young guy back there sitting there waiting that you thought was going to be your future, and then you're giving this old aging player who's still good $50 million a year. I don't really like it. I hope it's different, but what do you make of him going back to Green Bay?
Yeah, I think he should. The NFC is so much weaker than the AFC right now. Just Aaron Rodgers going back to Green Bay. Outside of the Rams, the Packers and the Rams are the only 2 on paper division champion teams right now. In the AFC, if he went to the Broncos like everyone thought, he would have had to be the division we were just talking about with Russell Wilson. He would have had to go against Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. There's so many good teams in the AFC. The NFC is really weak. His division is weak. He owns Chicago. He owns Minnesota. He owns Detroit. And they're going to bring Devontae Adams back with him. He's got a foundation there. And Matt LaFleur is the most winning coach after 3 years in NFL history because of Aaron Rodgers. And, it's a good day for Green Bay, too, because if Aaron Rodgers leaves, they immediately fall to one of the worst teams in the NFL. And, Jordan Love gets all this hate, He's not the worst NFL draft pick. He got picked, and Aaron Rodgers won back-to-back MVPs. So if you're Green Bay wasting a first-round pick to motivate Aaron Rodgers, that seems like a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point for sure. The pick can be considered wasted, but when you put it in that context, I think it definitely makes a little bit more sense. Now, in other news, jumping over to another sport, MLB. Now, it's still not going. The season is still not starting yet. There was a lot of discussions today. It seemed like the owners and players were finally on the same page. It seemed like the season might start At least a week later, maybe some of those canceled games becoming doubleheaders, but that didn't turn out to be the case. The owners and the players couldn't agree on the international draft situation. It's going to be tough. The season is pushed back until, I believe, April 14th now at this point. So there's really no clear sight as to when the MLB season will start, which is very upsetting, very disappointing. But at least the two sides do seem like they're getting closer. Zach, what do you make of this situation? We are getting closer, but we're still not there yet.
I don't know. I just think it's like a travesty. I mean, you're a Yankees fan. I'm a Mets fan. We have two teams who spend money. We have two teams whose owners are kind of different from all these other teams. We don't really fit into this whole situation. Both of our owners want them to spend more money so that they can spend more money themselves. I just want to see baseball. There's all this excitement. I feel like it just died off. That free agency session right before the lockout was awesome. All the movement. I mean, as a Mets fan, obviously it was exciting because we spent all that money and got guys like Scherzer. But just it felt like excitement about baseball. And then last week, it was like it's deadline day and there was all this traction to a deal and it fell through. And then today, all this build up again and they're like, there's going to be a deal today and then there's not. And then, oh, the deadline came, but now they're still talking after the deadline. Like, enough already. Let's just play baseball. It's a tough position for everyone to be in. We want baseball. It's just weird. I want people to play, and I want people to try to win, not try to not win, and just get baseball on the field. The baseball better come back quick because NFL free agency, March Madness, they're going to get overshadowed quick. They already ruined their fans once. They shouldn't try to go for it again.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Listen, we can't have another situation like the 1994 baseball strike. No. That would absolutely kill this sport. What they should be doing is getting back to the sport as soon as possible. It feels like fans are finally re-engaged with the sport again. You know, not to the extent of NBA or the NFL, but it does seem like viewership and fan interest is increasing. And yet we still can't get a deal. And I think if this season ends up being canceled, which I don't think it will be, but if it does, that would cause unrepairable damage to the game of baseball. I don't think it'll ever recover. Hopefully, though, we get a deal soon. Also, though, you mentioned March Madness. What's going on with that, Zach? Because I know you keep up with this all the time.
Oh, it's the best time of the year.
Oh, yeah, I know March, you keep up with it. Yeah,
best time of the year.
Tell me what's going on.
It's best time of the year. It's March. You know, it feels like, well, it snowed today, but it feels like spring outside. You know, we got baseball usually reporting to spring training, the NFL free agency, but it's March Madness. This is Champ Week. Conference champions are being crowned. You know, Jonathan came on and he'll talk about Marist, but you don't want to talk about Marist. But it's Champ Week. We're getting down Selection Sundays on Sunday. We're getting down to 68 teams. There's already some big-time upsets in these mid-major conferences. You know, it's March. You want it. You want it. Single elimination. You know, it's the epitome of brutality for these teams that lose. But March, it's why it's the biggest sporting event of the year. Everybody tunes around. Cinderella, it's what we want to see. It's American culture. March Madness, it's great. And, you know, it's loaded. It's loaded. In the debate show, they'll give you their thoughts about who's going to win it all. There's a lot of teams alive. There's a lot of parity, which makes it very exciting this season. Yeah, it's always fun to watch. I don't really always tune in to NCAA basketball. I know that's something you're really into a lot. You keep up with that all the time. But I will say March Madness is always something that gets me to turn on my TV. I always love to keep up with that, especially when we get to the Sweet 16, Final Four, that time. It's always a blast to watch those games because it's live or die then. Absolutely. So we got some great segments coming up for you guys pretty soon. We're going to get right into the game show. Zach's going to be leaving us, but that's no worry. I'm going to sit with two people you're very familiar with, Rob and Nick, and they're going to get right into it. They're going to dive into it, get right after each other. And then Zach's going to bring it back, talk with Jonathan, and then you'll see us again to close out. So we'll see you guys in just a moment. First of all, you know, we've had some big quarterback moves in these past 2 days. Aaron Rodgers obviously going back to the Packers, and the Broncos dealing for Russell Wilson. Tell me, out of these two teams, who do you think has a better shot at making it all the way to the Super Bowl? Nick, I'm going to kick it to you first. Let's run it.
Yeah, I don't even think this is necessarily close, and I'm going to go with the Green Bay Packers here. When you think about how good of a team they were last year, they made some huge strides on defense. They were the first overall seed in the NFC, and they just brought Devontae Adams back on the franchise tag. And then on top of that, you're bringing back Aaron Rodgers, who's been arguably, if not the best quarterback in the NFL, one of the top 3, top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. You're bringing him back on an extension now. This is a guy who's won the MVP the past 2 seasons. I don't even know if it's much of a talk at this point. And then you throw on top of the fact, too, that when you look at the division that the Packers are playing in, the NFC North, I mean, what are we afraid of here? Who are they going to have to go through? Kirk Cousins? Jared Goff? Nothing wrong with a young quarterback in Justin Fields, but I mean, new head coach that he's going to be dealing with here in his second season. I mean, this is going to be a cakewalk just to win the division for the Packers, let alone let them get started in the NFC, making it to the Super Bowl. I see them as the clear-cut team that has a better chance to make the Super Bowl. The NFC, now with Russell Wilson leaving and going to the AFC, I frankly don't see many obstacles in their way to get to the playoffs, make a further run. And then when you look at the Broncos on the other side, what they're going to have to go through in that division, I mean, you're looking at some top-tier quarterbacks, some top-tier teams there. The Chiefs with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, the young star Justin Herbert with the Chargers, one of the most underrated quarterbacks in Derek Carr and the Raiders who just made the playoffs. I mean, there's a lot that they're going to have to go through just to win their division. And when you talk about all those good teams in the same division beating up on each other, you know, one of those teams is going to get the wild card, but it's going to be the winner, the wild card, and then that may just be it based on how much they're going to beat up on each other. So I think the Packers are in the much better position to make it to the Super Bowl.
Woo! Nick coming out of the gates red hot. I love it. I love to see it, and love the Derek Carr sentiment, by the way. Rob, what do you got to say?
First of all, I don't appreciate the brownie points, you know, complimenting Derek Carr to try to butter up the judge.
I mean, he's a great quarterback, highly underrated.
But it is a tale as old as time. In order to win a Super Bowl, first you must win the NFC Championship. The Packers, they get a cakewalk through their division every season. They make it to the playoffs. They get a little deep in the playoffs. Then they face a serious challenge, and they can't get it done. They have not been able to escape choking that NFC Championship game in years. Now, on the side of the Broncos, bringing in Russell Wilson is the missing piece that they have needed for so long. They have not made playoffs since winning the Super Bowl in 2015. But also keep in mind, they haven't had a good quarterback since that season as well, with Peyton Manning retiring. Now they have a solid offense. They have Javonte Williams carrying the ball, who is going to have a breakout season this year. He's one of the best rookie backs last year. They have great weapons in Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. Losing Font isn't a huge loss for the team at the tight end position. He wasn't really producing that much on offense. Now you look over to the defensive side of the ball for the Broncos. It's a championship caliber defense already, something that the Packers do not have. That's been their missing piece for a long time, is their defense. But you look at their secondary in Bryce Callahan, you have Justin Simmons, you have Patrick Surtain, who had a great rookie year as well. That defense is fantastic. You have Bradley Chubb rush in the pass. They might even try to get Von Miller back, is what I've been hearing lately, is they might be trying to make a move on that. So you look at that defense, and that is one heck of a defense that has been able to get it done for them consistently. But when you're not able to get off the field because you have someone like Drew Lock throwing 2 interceptions on average a game that he starts, then you can't get your defense isn't going to produce because they have no time to rest. But when you look at the pieces that they finally have put together, yes, they have a tough division, but as soon as they can escape that division, they can make it to that Super Bowl and they can win it.
Great points to both of you guys. Both did a great job. I think on one hand, yes, Packers are good. They're in a weak division. They have the reigning MVP, 2-time MVP. On the other hand, the Broncos, they just got Russell Wilson. Their team is nothing to mess with either. But I think it comes down to 2 things. One, Broncos division is a tough one. Can't see them winning that division by any means, let alone squeaking out a 3rd or 4th place. That's still going to be tough for them, I think. And you know, I can't go against my word. I did just say on the news segment that I think the Broncos are still not going to be that good of a football team. They're going to be a fringe playoff team at best. So, I hate to do this, Rob, but I'm giving this first round to Nick. I think the Packers, yes, while they haven't won an NFC championship in a while and they tend to choke, I still think they're better set up to go after a Super Bowl than the Denver Broncos. But the Denver Broncos got time. It's all right. It's all right. It's all right. Anyway, let's get into the next question. What conference is the NCAA tournament winner going to come out of? Rob, you lost the last round, so let's start with you.
I really think when you're looking at the conference from a broad statement as a whole, there's no better conference than the SEC. The winner has to come from there. There's no doubt. You look at their top 4 teams right now: Auburn, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Arkansas. Teams sit at 15-3, 14-4, 14-4, and 13-5, and they've been a powerhouse conference. They've had some tough losses overall, but you know, you look at Auburn. They have Jabari Smith, who is averaging 17.1 points per game. He is electric on both sides of the court. He can get back and play great defense on any guard of another team. He is a fantastic, solid centerpiece of their team. You look at Kentucky. They have Oscar Tshiebwe, who's averaging 17.3 points per game and 15.3 rebounds per game. That is unheard of in the NCAA right now, and those are the kind of numbers you need to win a championship. Then you look at Tennessee being led by Kennedy Chandler, 13.7 points per game. All of this is just all about production. And you look at the SEC, and to beat the best, you have to play the best. And they have had, well, these 4 teams have played against countless, ranked opponents. Some of them being in the SEC, but they are able to get the job done, win against ranked opponents, and they have the best chance of going. And you look back, because I know Nick's going to say the Big 12, spoiler alert, but you look back, they have the Big 12 SEC showdown, and the SEC won it. So I think right now, the SEC is in the best possible place for one of those teams to make a run and win the tournament.
Great stuff, great stuff. I might have to agree with you there, but let's see what Nick's got to say.
Yeah, so I am taking the Big 12 here, and I'll get this out of the way first. Yeah, sure, did the SEC do a little better in that showcase? Sure, whatever. How long ago was it? I don't care. You want to talk about a conference now that has a lot of top-tier teams? I'm going to go with the Big 12. When it comes to defensive efficiency, the Big 12 has a lot of good teams. 3 of the top teams in the Big 12 are also in the top 12 when it comes to defensive efficiency this season. We'll start with Texas here. Chris Beard, the new head coach. They've had a little bit of a couple bad losses here to close out the season, but his defenses are always going to be contenders in this tournament, always going to cause some trouble. We'll move on to Texas Tech, another team that's been playing a little bit up and down of late, but again, I think that their defense, which has also been really good this year, sixth in defensive efficiency, that stat I just alluded to. I think they're also going to make some waves in the tournament. And then we get into some of the heavy hitters, and we get started with Kansas. They're going to lead on their leadership of their seniors, Agbaji and McCormick, both guys who are there playing for Kansas, been there for a long time. I think that experience matters. They also have junior guard Christian Braun, who's there, can get to the rim at will. These guys, these experience, I think, is something that can't go unlooked. And also their coach, Bill Self, a guy who's got a lot of experience in the tournament, a lot of experience in these big-time games. He's won an NCAA tournament in his career. I think that's big time for Kansas. I think that experience is huge. And then the last team I want to talk about in this conference is Baylor, a team that's been playing great basketball lately. When you look back to that team in Baylor who won the tournament last year out of the Big 12, it was right around this time when they started to play really well. You get to that second half of February leading up to conference tournaments, and that was when they really kind of kicked it into the gear, and they were really kind of that second team everybody was talking about next to Gonzaga. Right now they're sitting third in the poll. They've got conference tournament coming up, and I think we're starting to see history repeat itself of a team playing really good basketball in Baylor down the stretch when they need to, going into conference tournaments, going into this NCAA tournament. And now Scott Drew has gotten over the hump. He's won an NCAA tournament. They've got players from last year's championship teams with that experience. So when it comes to who's going to win this tournament, I'm going to go with the experience. I'm going to go with the Big 12.
Both fantastic points, gentlemen. Both great conferences with great teams. It's definitely tough. Definitely a tough one. But I think I'm going to have to give it to Rob. SEC, they got a great crop of teams. They got a good thing going on there. I think I'm going to have to give it to the SEC. I think the winner might come out of there. All right, boys, let's finish this thing up. Let's declare a winner right after this. Tell me, who is the best Eastern Conference NBA team? Nick, let's get it.
Best Eastern Conference NBA team right now. Pains me to say this as a Knicks fan. It's the Philadelphia 76ers. I got to give it to them. They've got so much going on for them right now after they just brought in James Harden. They've been playing some incredible basketball with him, and they've really gotten their first big 3 since they had Jimmy Butler on the team now with Joel Embiid, James Harden, and Tyrese Maxey as that third piece here. And you know what's better than a big 3 for this team is that every single guy on this roster knows what their role is. And I think that's more key than having just top-tier talent, because you've got your 2 big guys in Joel Embiid and James Harden, and Tyrese Maxey, who complements that as the third piece there. But then you've also got Matisse Thybulle, who's the great defensive player. You've got 3-and-D guys in Georges Niang and Danny Green. And then you've got a guy like Tobias Harris, who now you take so much pressure off him because you don't have to rely on him to be a consistent offensive weapon. And you can take a lot of that pressure off him, like when they had Jimmy Butler there, and he didn't have to be a consistent offensive piece. I think that's so huge that everybody knows their role. And Connor, I know you're a big stats guy, so I got some numbers for you that I got to run by you. I love running numbers. They've played 5 games since these 3 have been together. They've played 5 games together since the trade. In that time since the trade, they're 5-0. They've scored 133, 125, 123, 125 again, and 121 points in those 5 games. Harden's averaging 24.6, Embiid 32.6, and Maxey 22.8 points per game. When these guys are all together, and all these guys know their role up and down the roster. It comes together beautifully. They've got a great coach in Doc Rivers who's pulling it all together. This is the best team in the Eastern Conference.
I love those stats. I love when you give me some numbers. I love getting that to break it down. Sixers are certainly hot, especially now that they got James Harden. But tell me, what's your pick?
I'm going to have to go with the Miami Heat here. You know, what makes a good team great is their ability to be consistent and their ability to have a bench. And there's no better bench right now than the Miami Heat with Tyler Hero. Tyler Hero is leading the league in points off the bench. And I know you're a stats guy. I'm going to go with it too. He is leading it with 28 points per game off the bench on average. The next closest is Kelly Oubre at 18. So he is by far leading the league in points off the bench. But then you look at the roster that the Miami Heat have. You have Jimmy Butler. You have Bam Adebayo, who is a monster. You have Duncan Robinson, who is a three-point machine. You have Victor Oladipo, who just came off of injury. All of these guys are star players that come together on this roster. And you talk about consistency. Throughout the season, and I forgot about Kyle Lowry, excuse me, also a star player on that team. That is a complete roster right there. But you talk about consistency. Lowry's been out. They still won. Bam has been out. They still won. Jimmy's missed some games. They still won. So even if they are missing one of their top tier pieces, they are still able to consistently win because they all fill in their roles and they continue to be successful and they continue to win because of how complete that this team is. And now that hopefully everyone stays back from injury, everyone's here to play, it's going to be a great tail end of the season. They only have a few challenges left on their schedule. You know, I believe I checked, they lost to the Suns tonight, but Jimmy was out. But overall, you know, they got a little bit of an easy closing schedule for them. And overall, once you look at that bench, you look at who they have, there's no doubt in my mind that the Heat are the best conference in the East. I think with the Sixers, they're a great team, but they still have the chemistry that they need to figure out. And it's too late in the season for them to be able to do that down the stretch come playoff time and everything like that. So overall, the Miami Heat are the best in the East. They're going to win the East, and they're going to go on to the finals.
Man. You guys have this might be my toughest decision I've ever had to make on this show. Those are two great points. These teams are both hot. Both have great players and role players, as you both said. On the hand of the Sixers, I mean, they just got this James Harden trade, and I think right off the bat, nobody would assume that they would have won that trade, but it seems like they kind of are right now. They look great. And on the other hand, I mean, the Heat, they have that pedigree. They were at the finals, 2 years ago? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they definitely have that, and they have the young talent there. They have the pieces, especially now that they added Kyle Lowry. Man, I might need a second to stew on this because this is tough. I think at the end of the day, what it's going to come down to is this. What team, when they have all their pieces, is going to get the job done? As you mentioned, a lot of guys in the Heat are hurt, Bam being one of them.
But he's back. He just got back.
I know he just got back. And on the other hand, with the Sixers, I mean, they got Harden now. And look what they've done in these first 5 games. But can they keep that? That's my question. Do you think they can?
Of course I think they can. I would have argued for that if I did it.
All right. I think on this one, all right, listen, guys, all right. Due to the pedigree and because the trade is still young, I'm going to go with the Heat for now.
Go.
Listen. And let me explain my point. Honestly, if we could do this, I would give this the first ever tie on the show.
No.
Because these were this was great. But nobody wants a winner. Everybody wants to be the winner.
We're not the NFL here.
No. So I'm going to give it to Rob, but it was very close. But I'm going to give it to Heat just because they have the pedigree. They have those pieces. A lot of guys are coming back. They're going to be much better when those guys come back. So I think in the long run, they might do better. We've seen what happens when teams go after James Harden. It didn't work out for the Nets. I think it is going to inevitably work out for the Sixers. But I don't know if I'm ready to call them the best team yet in the Eastern Conference. So, Rob, you won this one. How do you feel?
I feel great, man. You know, this is my first one on the show. There's no one else I would have rather beat than Nick. It's a great feeling. I wasn't going to bring up either that the Heat did beat the Sixers just 4 days ago.
Without James Harden.
But tie back to my point, Heat are able to win when they're missing their pieces. So, wasn't going to bring it up, but I'll bring it up. You know, I feel great. Happy to get my first win. Nick's sleeping in the snow tonight. It's a great night.
Nick, you going to bounce back from this? What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I came in here. I put together some arguments that I stood behind. I still stand behind them. And hey, you come in, you do the best you can, and then you move on to the next one. So we'll be back on the show soon enough.
Well, let me tell you this, Rob, you're lucky that Packers-Broncos debate wasn't the last one, because that would have went right to Nick. Because if you think the Broncos are a legitimate Super Bowl contender, you're crazy. 100%. No,
you're just biased because you're a Raiders fan, but
get out of here. Anyway, that's all the time we have for Prove Your Point. Let's kick it on over to Zach Musso and Jonathan Kinane talking about the Marist Red Foxes.
Welcome back to another edition of the Red Fox Report. Here with me today is Jonathan Kinane, our Marist center field beat writer for the women's team, who had to witness some misery in Atlantic City this week. How you doing, Jonathan? How was the week? Or the day, I should say.
It was about a day, 36 hours from when we got there to when we made the drive back today. But misery is the operative word, Zach. A very difficult 12-hour stretch for the men's and women's basketball team. So we could be better, but, glad we're here.
So Tuesday, March 9th is the day that will live in infamy for you. You'll never forget that day. So it started when the women's team tipped off about 11:30. I noticed that they scored like 4 points in the first quarter, so that must have been a good start to the game.
Yeah, it was a slow start, then it was a slow middle, then it was a slow end. There was nothing ever picked up. Like sometimes with the women, they'll start fast, then slow down, then pick up. But this was just consistent drudgery, consistent misery on their end. They shot, if memory serves, they shot 10 of 52 from the field and 1 of 22 from 3. So I mean, you cannot win a game like that unless you're playing like 7th grade CYO or something.
I don't even know about 7th grade CYO. It's like Russell Westbrook type numbers. So then after that, you got to forget about it. You got a couple hours. You got to get some lunch, some dinner, and then about like 10 o'clock last night, the men's game tipped off, and they were never in the game. Right out of the start, they got kind of ran out of Quinnipiac. After about the first 10 minutes of the game, they kind of separated, and then more misery.
Yeah, it was a tough one against Quinnipiac last night. There's something about that 6-11 game that tips off late that's just cursed for Marist. They haven't won a game since in the Atlantic City in the MAC tournament since 2015. It's like a curse. There's no better way to describe it. But yeah, I mean, they got it down to 6 at the half last night. And I was telling Christian DeBlock, our men's beat writer, who was down there with me, I say, Christian, if they come out and they cut into this deficit in the first few minutes of the second half, they got a chance. But that's not at all what happened. Quinnipiac blitzed them right out of the second half buzzer, and after that, it was pretty much over.
And so this last weekend, they hit that Western New York trip, which was brutal, right before their turnaround to Atlantic City. They played Canisius, who was in the bottom of the league, and Niagara. They lost by double digits twice. If they won one of those games, they would have had a first-round bye and wouldn't have even played till tomorrow. Yep. And now Iona lost today, so they could have been the front runners in that side of the bracket. So last weekend, what happened there?
The Buffalo trip's a tough one. When you're coming from Poughkeepsie to Buffalo, I mean, that's not even the longest trip in the MAC, but it's still 6 hours of the beautiful New York State Thruway, which is not beautiful at all. But that's a tough trip, and I'd give them a pass in the first game. On the Canisius game, you come out, you might be flat from the road trip. They didn't. It wasn't like a blowout, but they never really felt like they were in that game. But that game against Niagara on Saturday, that was an important game. There was a lot riding on that game. They should have been up for it, but I mean, the scoreline 83-52 indicates that they were totally not up for that game, and it was just bad momentum heading into Atlantic City, and they couldn't quite shake it off.
Yeah, when I talked to John Dunn last week, he said you got to play the cards you were dealt. They didn't really play the cards they were dealt. They kind of just rolled over last night, but what's next?
Folded.
What's the future of Marist men's basketball? Where do they go from here? It feels like the last 3 years they had been in a slow build-up, and then last night was the moment where if they got that win, it felt like the program was headed in the right direction, and they kind of crashed down to earth last night. So what's next?
Yeah, that's a great assessment. And what's next, we don't know. I mean, they're graduating a whole bunch of people, guys like Matt Harasmi and Jordan Jones, who have been around the program forever, guys like Raheem Sullivan, Samkelo Sele, who came in as transfers. So it really depends on how much of the young core they're able to keep with the transfer portal and whatnot. So guys like Ricardo Wright, Jalatuka, and Noah Harris, if those three stay, then Marist will still have a great, great backcourt, like probably one of the best in the MAC. But if they leave, if Jalatuka or Ricardo Wright, opts for greener, bigger pastures, then there's going to be some uncertainty. And there is uncertainty, especially in the front court. They don't have a lot coming back, so they're probably going to have to hit the portal, try to find someone there. But, definitely this year felt like it might be the year where something happens. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on John Dunn next season. That's for sure.
Yeah, and so your expertise is women's basketball, of course, as the beat writer. So this year, it's okay to have a down year every once in a while. Can we chalk this up to a down year, or is this where the program's headed?
Oh, it was just a down year. That's simple as that. I mean, injuries, transfers, graduations. When Marist stepped on to the court against St. Peter's, when the ball tipped off, they didn't have any of the top 6 scorers from last year's NCAA tournament team. So, and Brian Georges, this is his worst season. 8-20, 8-21, I think, with the loss yesterday, is his worst season at Marist, and it will be his worst season at Marist. Next year is going to pick up. They have a good recruiting class. They're getting Kiara Fisher back. They should have everyone back, minus Kendall Crick, who really played some good basketball toward the end of her career. But this year was just a blip. As simple as that, There aren't many coaches who could have done more than Georges with this team. And, it was a tough year, but next year, the Georges last dance will definitely be more of a year to remember.
So you got to go to Atlantic City. Did you get any partying in while you're down in Atlantic City?
If you call staying up till 3 in the morning writing stuff partying, then yes. But the mood, not conducive to partying last night. I'll tell you what, we were on the boardwalk, me and Christian walking home from the hotel. It was just an absolute loss. We were at an absolute loss. I mean, yeah, we were hoping we didn't get mugged by some, person who comes out of a casino and needs more money. But it was just, it was like, how many more years is this going to happen? Because it's always with the men's team, this is going to be the year. This is going to be the year. Well, the year isn't coming, and the year needs to come, or else, changes are going to need to be made. Even though John Dunn has built this place back into respectability in the regular season, at least. The reality is, it's all about results. And maybe it's not fair that a 30-game season boils down to 2 hours, but that's what happens when you're a mid-major. It's all about the postseason tournament, and Marist's inability to get it done might really hurt John Dunn in the future.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot then. Is John Dunn the guy to lead Marist to that spot?
I think he should get one more crack at it, obviously. I mean, I'm not campaigning for John Dunn to get fired.
It's all right. We're good with that. We like controversy.
I like the way he recruits. He's a good coach, a good guy, but it's about results. And you can't have 14 and 16 and losing in the first round of the Max every year. Something has to happen. And he's shown he can coach teams to success. He did it at St. Peter's. He helped them make the NCAA tournament. So it can happen, but I got to say, if I'm Tim Murray, the clock might be starting to tick a little bit here.
All right, so one last thing before we let you go. Right now, you're writing a multi-piece article for Center Field about Marist in the glory days in the 80s and the 90s and sanctions that came down on Marist. Mm-hmm. You're trying to bring the whole school down, make them relive all the bad memories. So just tell everyone what you're writing about right now. It's a very interesting piece. You can check it out on Center Field.
Well, thank you for the promo, Zach. But yeah, I mean, talk about Marist teams that could get it done. That's when they had Rick Smits, Miroslav Pekarski, guys that were really, really great basketball players. And yeah, it all started, I was on Wikipedia, and I saw one of their old coaches, Matt Frajanic, left after 2 good seasons. And I was like, why did this guy leave? I thought he might just be going to a bigger school since he had success, but no, it turned out there were, the players wouldn't play for him because he was really, a really, really strict guy, really got in your face, really would chew you out if you did stuff wrong. And the guy before that, Mike Perry, was where all those sanctions and violations you talked about came from. So I won't give too much away, but it's a look into what life was like, watching those teams, the atmosphere at Marist, the feeling around the school when you had a team that was, they weren't a blue blood or a national player, but people knew who Marist was back in the 80s with Rick Smits. So it's definitely kind of a look back in time. But I would encourage you guys to read it. I'm not going to make you read it, but if you'd like to, give it a read over on Center Field. And also, Zach's been writing some good stuff for us too, so check it out.
Yeah, well, so Jonathan, any last parting shots here? Has the emotion waned off? You good now? Did you just get everything out? This was a nice therapy session.
It was nice. It was cathartic. I can only do so much yelling to myself in the car. That was a joke. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I mean, next year hopefully you guys can talk to me after one or both Marist teams has a good showing in Atlantic City.
All right. Well, Jonathan, thanks for joining us on another edition of the Red Fox Report.